Hi everyone, welcome to the community classroom. This is Dr. Tracey McCarthy, psychologist, attorney, and educator, and what we're going to be addressing today is the criminal defense of entrapment and social media. We have already discussed entrapment in terms of criminal defenses that can be raised, and what we're going to look at today is not only the definition of entrapment, we are also going to be looking at how this defense can be defended against by the police and prosecutors. And so even though it is a criminal defense, there are some responses that law enforcement might make in response to this defense that may nullify this defense. And so we're going to look at how social media serves to assist with entrapment, and how social media might also simply provide a fertile ground for acting on a criminal predisposition. We're going to look at the elements of entrapment, so we're going to know exactly what it is when we see it. We're going to look at some of the types of crimes that might be committed on social media. We are also going to look at some of the issues related to predisposition and sort of the psychology, the behavioral response patterns of individuals that may be manifested on social media. We're going to also look at some court cases regarding entrapment. We're going to look at the trap model, and then provide some information regarding legal assistance for those who are involved in the criminal justice system. Now, generally speaking, many people enjoy police and detective movies and primetime shows. And so one thing to think about is these are movies and primetime shows, but they are very much in many ways grounded in reality, meaning some of the issues that they are dealing with are some of the same issues that are being dealt with in real life. And in many instances, some of those things are playing out now in social media. And as you can see, there are a number of types of crimes that may involve law enforcement and social media. And so there are a number of things that people are doing on social media that would draw the attention of law enforcement, or if law enforcement is already on social media, which of course they are, these are the types of things that may be involved in terms of what you call sting operations. And so you have some issues related to marijuana, and these are news clippings, and you can see police now using Facebook for marijuana busts. You also see information regarding the Blacktivist accounts, and so there might be some issues related to treason with those sorts of things. And then you also see FBI on social media for religious warfare dynamics. And you can also see, where Congress, so the legislature, is releasing information that has been collected regarding Facebook ads. And social media is very interesting in terms of the way that crimes are committed. Usually when people are involved in criminal activity, they tend to keep it pretty hush-hush. They keep that dynamic quiet. But there's something about social media that encourages people to manifest predispositions, to engage in criminal activity out in the open and also publicize it. And so, of course, it makes sense that law enforcement would be actively involved in social media, either monitoring social media or actually participating in social media in what you would call sting operations in some instances. And the issue of entrapment is already coming up in a number of news stories, as we've already mentioned. And so some of the crimes that people might be involved in, some people might not even think about them as crimes as they're engaging in them, particularly young people. And so this is definitely a community classroom activity that young people should participate in. because sometimes those are the ones who naively get involved in activities that are not going to serve them well. And so you can see some of the issues that might be going on social media. You have things like treason, and you have racketeering, involving fraud and swindling and criminal activity. You have a lot of people collecting money from other people on social media, with many of these GoFundMe accounts and things like that, or simply asking for donations for projects that people are claiming to work on, and in many instances they have no intentions on working on those projects. And just as an aside, it might be helpful in future instances regarding this issue of swindling and fraud and internet activity. If people are going to donate to something, perhaps they might want to suggest or insist on there being a trust established versus simply blindly giving hundreds of thousands or thousands of dollars to any particular individual on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any other social media activity. And again, just as a recap, some of the things that are going on social media that the police may be involved in are things like drug sales, of course, and all sorts of scams and money laundering, and again, the treasonous activity, and also trafficking, all sorts of trafficking, if you're talking about human trafficking. And as another aside, a number of people also get caught in issues of adultery because of social media. Again, people are doing things publicly that used to be done privately and in a very brazen manner. And so it doesn't take a lot to entrap them, and entrapment isn't necessarily necessary. Now, the dynamic of entrapment it's really a simple dynamic. It basically involves the action of what are called government agents or officials. And it also involves one of those entities inducing someone to commit a crime that the person is not previously disposed to commit. And see, that's the important part that people are missing. Many times people think simply because the police were involved, law enforcement was involved, there was a sting operation, that they can then use the defense of entrapment. But that's not necessarily the case. Of course, people can use whatever defense they want. The question is whether or not it's going to be a viable defense. And so entrapment is this defense to criminal charges when the defense attorney can establish that an agent or official, government official, originated the idea of the crime. And so that person is the one who created this whole situation, this whole criminal situation, and then induced the accused person to engage in it. Now, here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you're talking about social media, the police could be watching social media, law enforcement can be watching social media while other individuals are involved in things. And so then a person is just noted as doing these things on social media, and they're noted to be doing these things by law enforcement simply because law enforcement was there and observed it, recorded it, does not then mean it is entrapment. So let's say you have two people on social media. One makes a drug sale offer and someone accepts that, and the law enforcement observe this. And so when there is a prosecution for this, this is not an issue of law enforcement entrapping anyone. So generally speaking, what entrapment is about is the law enforcement officer actually using fraud or something like that to lure a person into committing a crime that they had no thought or plan for committing. Now, if the officer, the law enforcement officer, simply created the opportunity for someone to commit a crime, and a person was already planning to do it, then that entrapment defense is probably not going to be a viable one. And so what the courts are really trying to do is they're trying to deter law enforcement officers from engaging in what they consider reprehensible conduct. And so, in trying to induce unsuspecting, quote unquote innocent people, trying to induce them to engage in criminal activity that they would not have otherwise been planning to participate in. And you can see how that could happen very easily on YouTube, particularly if someone is a YouTube content creator and the YouTube content creator is actually law enforcement. And so the actions of that content creator may readily create a situation where entrapment might be more possible than if someone was just simply commenting or if law enforcement's just simply observing. And another thing, this is a psychological dynamic. One of the ways that the court determines whether or not there was entrapment or whether there was predisposition, the court basically looks at a person's past behavior. They look at any past criminal record. They look at past patterns of behavior to determine if a person was predisposed to actually committing the crime. Now, the important thing about entrapment is that if a person is successful with this defense, so if entrapment is proven, it becomes a defense to criminal prosecution. And so the person could be found not guilty based upon this finding of entrapment. And so you see here the factual question is, would Johnny B. Good have purchased the drugs if not pressed by the narc? And so clearly if someone is a regular drug dealer, then a finding of entrapment is going to be a very difficult finding. And so that's probably not the best defense that a defense attorney might think to come up with in that type of situation. And so again, if law enforcement simply joins in a criminal enterprise, it's already a criminal enterprise going on, and law enforcement joins into that, finding entrapment is going to be, again, a very difficult finding because there was already a predisposition to behave in that manner prior to any law enforcement involvement. And as a reminder, if this video appears on any place other than the Dr. Tracey McCarthy channel, it is stolen and unauthorized. Okay, so there are a few places, of course, that we've mentioned that this issue of entrapment might come up. We're going to call it the trap scene. Goes right along with trap music. Okay, and so you might find issues on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And again, entrapment is a complete defense to the criminal charge. And it's based upon this idea that government agents may not originate a criminal design and then implant that design into an innocent person's mind. And so if there is no predisposition, then you have a better chance with that entrapment defense. And so there are two elements to the valid entrapment defense. And so you have the government inducement of the crime, and then the defendant's lack of a predisposition to engage in that particular type of criminal conduct. And just so that you know, the issue of predisposition is the most important one of those two. And so you can have government quote unquote inducement, but if you have someone who is significantly predisposed, that's probably going to far outweigh the simple government involvement. And this trap model gives you a nice visual to help you to understand how this works online. Basically, the person, it's fish bait, so get trapped in a net, this trap model. Person goes online, and there are a variety of places a person can go online. They form a trap alliance, and the question again is the person induced or predisposed to join into this criminal alliance? And then you have the actual criminal action, and this is the person joining in the criminal activity. Again, the question is, are you looking at true inducement, or are you looking at a predisposition? Now, remembering that inducement is the basic threshold for that entrapment defense. And so if law enforcement is able to, if the prosecutor is able to overcome that inducement issue, then it will be difficult to fully assert that entrapment defense and have it be successful. And so again, just the mere solicitation to commit a crime, that's not inducement. And there's some court cases up here that you can look at. And so that's not going to just give you an entrapment defense. And also, if the government, if law enforcement uses some sort of pretense or some sort of deception, that in and of itself is also not going to prove this inducement. And so there has to be some sort of showing of behavior that is, there has to be some sort of coercion going on. And so things, based on, need and sympathy and friendship, that again is not going to necessarily overcome that whole issue of predisposition. And so those are the things that people need to look out for. And so even if inducement has been shown, that issue of predisposition is going to be crucial in terms of that defense. And so if the prosecutor can overcome that inducement issue with a finding of a predisposition, then the entrapment defense is not going to it's probably not going to be a viable one. Not saying that it can't work, but it's probably not going to be a viable defense. And if you want to look at a few more cases, recent cases regarding entrapment, you can look at the Jacobson case out in 1992, and there's also the Matthews case from 1988. And so you can look at those cases and get some better ideas about how entrapment might work with a particular situation. And for those who are looking for legal assistance, perhaps referrals in the New York area, in particular, we have the New York example here, but you can find these services all over the country. You can contact Legal Aid Society. And so if you're in the New York area, the number is 212-577-3300. And again, the Legal Aid Society exists for those who may be too impoverished to be able to, on their own, protect their rights to equal justice. And for those of you who are parents of young people who are on the internet, you might want to take some time to sit down with them and explain to them very clearly and concretely what behavior is and is not acceptable when they are participating online. Remember, knowledge is power. Take care and see you soon.